Well, let's separate some of the noise from the actual signal here in terms of what we're seeing from the marketplace. We're seeing an uptick in the number of studios. We're seeing an uptick in the number of ventures created by those studios. We're seeing more unique partnerships and models being experimented with. Some of those are working better than others. So let's talk about the data. What are some outcomes and some data that you can point to that can give us an indication that startup studios are working and it's a valid model for creating new ventures?
Yeah, so the earliest, I would say, like I mentioned before, trial test data that's out there was published a couple months ago by GSSN. They surveyed just about 250 startups that came out of studios. I don't know how many studios were surveyed in this, but let's say it was obviously a smaller number than that because they pump out numerous studios each. The three numbers that we like to point to, or the three metrics we like to point to, are IRR and TVPI, which are both metrics of success at a fund, and then speed to stage. So the typical traditional startup IRR, internal rate of return, is around 22%. The best we've seen is around 30%. Startups created by studios, though, are 53%. So that's twice as high. IRR is also a time-based value, time-based formula. And because studios create startups very quickly and get them to stage faster, well, then you have a higher IRR. And so let's look at that speed. Traditional startup from going from zero to seed takes around 36 months, and that's the average. Startups that come out of studios, though, that go from zero to seed is in about 11 months, just under 11 months. And then the last thing, from seed to Series A, the typical startup takes 56 months in total, and the startups created by studios take just about 25 months. So we're looking at startups created much faster, which is a very important metric because we're talking burn. And when it comes down to, hey, investor, give me $500,000 to build my startup, and I'll give you X% in equity. Well, if you can basically double the speed in which you're growing the company, well, then the valuation is going to be much higher and you can get a better deal. So those are the early numbers that are out there. There's been a lot of speculation around them. Again, I like to say early trial test results, but when we're seeing these types of results with 250 startups over the last year, I want to take notice. I'm interested in that. And whether or not we've got much more data to back that stuff up, I want to dig deeper and find out what we're onto here.
So talking about the past, we were talking about some data here, early days and more recent days for startup studios. So looking at your crystal ball, where are studios going, or where would you like to see them go? What trends would you like to see them continue producing, and what can we expect?
Totally. So there's two sides to this. Right now, I'm mapping out basically what's the current state of studios. I'm mapping that out in a new white paper. And in creating that outline, I recently realized, wow, we've come a really long way, even in the last 15 months, even since COVID hit. And in some regard, COVID hasn't changed much for studios, but on the other hand, it's changed a lot. And so a lot of what I'm interested in finding out now is some pretty detailed information, quite a bit around fund structure, types of entrepreneurs that work at studios and that do really well with studios, how studios are now fitting into the broader tech ecosystem, which includes VCs, accelerators, angels, entrepreneurs, universities, et cetera. The different models that are thriving versus those that are not really working, the ones that are human first versus idea first, or accelerator first versus company first. We want to look at some of the big wins in case studies, some of the stage gate processes that are working really well at some studios versus others. Like how are the studios doing that pump out a company in 3 months versus those that pump out in 9 months? I'm really interested in types of thesis. And so the most common types of theses that studios have are either by industry, so like we build healthcare products, or by geography, we build companies here in Seattle for the Seattle startup ecosystem, or by business model, we build e-commerce companies. And so I'm really curious which types of theses are rising to the top. I'm also curious what types of GPs are rising to the top, those that have had track record in corporate America or building 9 small companies or one huge company. I wanted to cross-reference that data. So we're at a point now where there's enough studios out there and there's enough of a track record for us to start collecting that. And so I think over the next 6 months, this will be a group effort from the entire studio and tech ecosystem to come together to start to collect this data and look at it. From a roadmap standpoint, I would say my personal goal is, it's a little bit audacious, but by, I would say, the end of 2022, so a year and a half, I want to see a standardized approach to launching a studio. So you know how if you want to whip up an SPV, you just go on Cardo or Assure and click a few buttons and you have your SPV, boom. If you want to whip up an angel fund, you just go on Angel List and click a few buttons and incorporate your fund and sign your docs, and boom, you have an angel syndicate. I want to do the same for studios, but this data collection needs to happen first. We need to know what model is working best and why and how fast and what types of lawyers and what types of accountants and all that. And so that's my personal main goal for the next year and a half, is to get us to the point of early standardization. During that time, I think we're going to see the number of studios double. Right now, I believe there are just about 400 legitimate studios around the world. I think by the end of 2022, we'll see just about 1,000. And by 2025, I think we'll see closer to 3,000 or 4,000. And I believe heavily in that. And the introduction of standardization, easier ways to launch a studio, more knowledge will inevitably increase the growth of the number of studios popping up, because it's easier to launch one. It's less friction, cheaper, faster. And then on top of that, I think we're going to start to see more corporates getting involved. I mean, the average time, to my knowledge, that it takes to close a deal with a corporate for a studio is 9 to 15 months. That's a really long time. I could raise a fund in that amount of time if I know what I'm doing. So a lot of studios are realizing, well, why would I go and spend 15 months trying to close a deal with one corporate if I could just go raise a fund and have it all myself? And that's a problem for the corporates, because we believe they need studios, that the most successful corporate innovation projects have been coming out of studios lately. So I think we're going to see more corporates pick up on that and start to prioritize the goal of closing deals with studios, which means create a partnership agreement for the studio to build a number of ventures and new products for corporates. So that's still going to take quite a while, and there needs to be obviously much more data for corporates to have stuff like that approved by their board, because we're talking much more decision making that has to take place. But I believe we'll see more of that. And then I think we're going to start to see the rise of tech tools in this space. For example, AngelList is like a tech platform for the world of venture capital. PitchBook, tech tool for the world of venture capital. There's none of that right now. And the last piece I would say on top of that actually is we need to see the rise of some media and publications here. There's no one-stop shop for the news and data and information around studios. There's people tweeting about it. There's some content on Medium. There's a little bit in like Forbes and Wall Street Journal, but it's pretty fragmented. It's all over the place. We basically need a tech crunch for studios. And so all of these things are kind of up in the air right now for people to take on. It's very dangerous, though, when folks see those opportunities and are thinking, oh, cool, here's a great opportunity in white space to go build one of those items I just mentioned in a new asset class if they don't have experience in the asset class, right? Like, this thing is still new and nascent and tight knit, and there is a club. There are multiple small clubs that exist in the world right now for studios, little communities, I should say, to figure this out together, and for a quote unquote outsider just come in and try to build something for their own gain. It's very dangerous, and that creates a lot more noise. And so reducing that noise is also very important. I am rambling now, but that's the high level of where I think we're going to start to see this space go in the next couple of years. The last and one of the most important pieces that I would say is I believe pretty soon on the horizon. I'm not sure who's going to take this on yet, but we need a big fish to enter the studio space. We need a well-respected financial institution, whether that's a major fund or a bank or an educational company or something else that I'm missing. They need to get in here and basically say, you know what, we believe in the future potential of studios, and we want to back them, or we want to enable them. And this has to be an organization that pretty much the entire industry already has significant respect for. Now, who's that going to be? I'm not sure. We're already talking to a number of different orgs about their interest in it, and they all kind of look a bit different as to how that plays out. But right now, there's still just general skepticism, as there would be with anything new. And I believe that upon a big fish coming in here and bringing some serious signal and trust into the space, that opens the floodgates to many, many, many angel investors and VCs and entrepreneurs and potential studio GPs coming in and saying, oh, okay, yeah, they're doing that. They believe in it now. Count me in.
That's great, Jake. Thanks so much. And thank you for taking time today to touch base and share your insights and interpretations about the startup studio space.
Sure.
And so just thank you for your time.
It's great. It's great stuff. And, look, we're all trying to do this together. So I'm more than happy to be here.